Assalamu alaikum, my beautiful sisters. Welcome back to the Heartful Awakening podcast. Today, we're going to be going deep into a question that's been coming up a lot in my coaching work with the Muslim women right now. And that question is, when does being a good Muslim stop being about ihsan, meaning excellence and sincerity, and start being about survival? Start being about one's core wounds. Okay, so for the past few episodes, we've been exploring trauma bonds, setting boundaries, having healthy femininity, how our nervous system learns that compliance equals safety. And here's what I've been noticing recently. This pattern doesn't only show up in our human relationships, it shows up also in our relationship with Allah, with our families, with our communities, and even with our own selves. So, this conversation made me a little bit uncomfortable at first because talking about trauma and obedience in the same sentence, it feels it feels a little bit dangerous because we don't want to be disrespectful towards the religion. We don't want to word things in the wrong way, right? Like it seems almost like we're going to give people permission to leave their deen, which is not what we're doing at all. We want to make sure that people approach their deen in a healthy way, making sure that their relationship with Allah is free of wounds and survival mechanisms, really, that we have developed over the years. So here's the thing we're going to be talking about today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't want us to worship out of fear alone. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants our full hearts. He wants our love. Allah is Al-Wadud. He is the most loving. And that is our key to spirituality. It's really love. Okay? And if you've been performing obedience out of fear of punishment, out of terror, out of anxiety. Okay, if your body goes into freeze mode every time you think about prayer, okay, oh no, I have to go make my wudu, and then you freeze, you can't get up, or you go to the washroom, you're just staring in the mirror and you can't seem to do your wudu. Okay, if you're struggling your way through worship, hoping that you're doing enough to avoid punishment, okay, that's not what the deen is supposed to feel like. Okay, so today I have a very special guest with me. Okay, this is Dr. Debbie Badawi. And today we're going to explore what is happening in the body when your obedience is fear-based versus when it flows out of genuine, loving devotion. Okay, so Dr. Debbie here, she has over 30 years of experience working with families, with youth who are at risk, and trauma survivors. Okay, she brings this incredible blend of clinical expertise and holistic healing. And what I love about her work is how she helps people to understand what exactly their bodies are telling them. So, Debbie, welcome, warm welcome to the podcast. Before we dive in, please tell us what drew you into this work of understanding trauma in the body.
Thank you, Sister, for the wonderful introduction here. I'm very pleased and blessed to be with you today. You know, what drew me into this work originally was my own healing, health, and wellness journey. I was at one time almost 300 pounds, and I was a health disaster waiting to happen. And I started on the journey on my own journey, and it sort of unfolded from there. And what I noticed in when I started working with others, and an important point to point out is, ironically, I'm not a trained physician. My clinical background comes from a nursing degree that I completed the coursework for, but I didn't go on to practice. And then it also came from my experience working with children and families and psychiatrists and mental health and emotional health professionals. And then my personal and professional experience with clients that I worked with over the years. And I think my biggest message is that if, you don't have to be a physician to understand these things, and you just have to be informed, right?
True.
So what originally attracted me to this lane of the nervous system and trauma is because I see daily people, whether they be Muslim, Christian, Jew, whomever they may be, and whatever faith they may be adhering to, or no faith at all, they are suffering. And that's number one. And number two, they are doing it alone, oftentimes because we tend to be trained that we're supposed to be strong and do things alone.
Yep.
And then, and then number three, um, I think that one of the biggest impacts with me was I had a personal experience with one client where, and when I say personal, it was professional, but I knew this client very, very well. And, you know, she just couldn't get beyond her trauma.
Mm.
And we approached things from so many different directions. And then when it came right down to it, she was Muslim. And when it came right down to it, spirituality came into the picture. And I realized that I was really focused on a lot of the like scientific, because I am a practitioner. I'm an energy medicine practitioner.
Mhm.
And I realized that she was having more of a spiritual issue than she was other issues, but they were manifesting through the other issues, physical, emotional, mental health. But it
Mm.
came down to spiritual issues because her focus was, I'm afraid of everything because I don't want Allah to be mad at me.
Yeah.
And that was like a light bulb moment to me. And that's when I integrated spirituality. Now, I'm Muslim, so I do come at it from an Islamic perspective, but I deal with a lot of different people with different backgrounds and different religions. I come at it from a godly God sense, the one and only, the one God of all things.
Mhm.
And as soon as we started kind of broaching that subject, things slowly started to shift. And I think that was the one moment where I really put all the pieces together between the nervous system, the physiology of things, the emotional and mental health, the trauma piece, and the spirituality piece.
I see. Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the thing is, all of these systems are happening in real time together, right? In unison. Like, I think what we see a lot today is people separating them from each other, thinking that they're separate. Like, oh, this is my spiritual life, this is my physical health, this is my mental health, this is my financial situation, and thinking that they're separate, but they're all working together, as you put it so beautifully. Um, so
Absolutely.
yeah, so I want to start with something that you and I have talked about before, how the body actually shows us the difference. So, how does it come up in the body when someone is performing fear-based obedience versus genuine, sincere, loveful, heartful devotion, right? So, what are you
Yeah.
noticing somatically when somebody is performing obedience versus when they're acting from a place of sincere connection and love?
Okay, that is such a great question. And in modern day life, in our modern day approaches to health, wellness, and healing, even the spirituality aspect of it, um, is very fragmented, and that's a dangerous place to be. What I see when I work with, it doesn't matter if I'm working with children, adults, it's the same. It just looks a little bit different. But what happens physiologically when you're working from that fear based, trauma based perspective, you're going to have signs of anxiety. You're going to have signs, it could be racing heart. It could be withdrawal. It could be, sweat. It could be shutting down, shutting people out.
Mm.
Um, Now, when we say shutting people out and shutting down, I am coming at that from a physiological stance because you're actually your system is actually shutting down. So you might not eat the way that you do, or you might overeat if you don't if you depending on your you know what you tend to do,
Mm-hmm.
what your tendencies are. Um, Another thing is focus. People can't focus, and part of the focus issue is if you're so worried about and stressed out about um your creator or whatever it may be, it could be financial, could be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're so stressed out and functioning under all of the trauma that we experience day in and day out, from small to great trauma, right?
Yeah.
um, you can't focus. For most, from an Islamic perspective, because we pray 5 times a day, the focus in the prayer. This is a big challenge for many, many people. That's like a key indicator when you can't get your brain to focus in a
Oh yeah.
moment. In a moment, that's a
Yeah.
that's a big physiological um, you know, alarm, because you're
Mm-hmm.
not able to get your brain to focus on what's at hand, despite the fact that we believe, and we know that the most important connection is Allah, and that our prayer is the one thing that is mandatory, that we have to do, and that is to remind us and keep us in a good place, right? In general.
Mm-hmm.
Other things, I mean, people break out in rashes, people have gut issues. Um,
Oh yeah.
breathing is. I worked with children for a long time, and I noticed over a period of years, children do not breathe properly. And the more stressed I saw children get, and that's from the trauma of trying to just keep up with everything and make everybody happy or do what they're supposed to do or behave or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they would come, they didn't run, they didn't walk fast, there was no reason for them to be breathing heavily,
Mm-hmm.
but they would come to talk about something, what could have been any topic, and their breathing was as if they had just stepped up a step of stairs, and they would
Wow.
have to catch their breath in between. So the breathing and our rate of breath, and whether it be, some people it's shallow breath, you're not inhaling enough, or
Mm-hmm.
some people it's more like labored breathing. It just, it's very individual, but those are a few of the big signs that I see. Overreacting to very small things,
Mm-hmm.
scatteredness, just being scattered, not able to bring things together. That's part of the brain, right? Where when you
Yeah.
can't bring things together and everything is scattered. Um,
Wow. So this all stems from fear.
yes,
Fear-based worship. It seems like
absolutely.
all of these things are going back to presence. I feel like it's stealing the presence away from us, the fact that we're scattered and we have these anxiety symptoms in our bodies constantly, children even struggling to breathe in a healthy way. I feel like with all of the rush that we're feeling today, the deadlines and the schedules and all of this, and then on top of it now adding more fear and more guilt and more shame using religion, I feel like now it's it's no wonder that we can't like live in the present, right? And I think that's what salah, that's what prayer is all about in Islam, is just being present with the Creator, which we can't do when we're in this state of fear. Because there's two different types of fear. Because I know people, they get confused. They say, "Oh, aren't we supposed to fear Allah? Like, what is taqwa?" right? But when you translate taqwa, it's God consciousness, right? It's having this awareness, and it comes back to what? It comes back to presence, right? Being
Of course.
being present with Allah, right? Not submitting from fear and like shaking. Those are two very, very different things. And you know, there is a saying in Islam that the prayer is the coolness of one's eyes, right? That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a relief. And the issue is when we're anxious or when we have this anxiety tied to the prayer, it's like our body naturally wants to escape that thing, which is why we'll see so many people procrastinating their prayers, not because they don't want to pray, but their body is rejecting it because of the meaning and the symbolism that they have associated with the prayer, right? The meaning
Yes,
that they've attached to it.
sure. Can I make one point? There's something that just it's really important. Do you mind if I just make one point about this fear of Allah?
Absolutely.
So, what I've learned over time, and when I talk about people, I'm including myself because we've all been there, no matter what our journey is, we all are human, right? So we've all experienced some form of the things that we're talking about, and fear is a big one. We've all experienced fear, and it's impacted our lives in all the areas of our lives, spirituality, health, wellness, healing, all of that. But when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our faith, what people misunderstand, I think what we as people, as human beings, misunderstand is that fear, yes, we are taught to fear Allah, but the fear that we're taught is because we're human, we can have very angelic thoughts and very, good thoughts. And at the same time, on the other side, we can have evil thoughts. All of us. That's
Hmm.
being human. The fear that we're supposed to have that we misunderstand is when I have a thought, I can gauge it if this is a holy, spiritual, God pathway, angelic thought, or
Hmm.
is this a thought that's going to lead me astray? It's evil, it's whatever. And then we base our actions on the choice between the good and the evil. That's the fear that I understand and believe that we should have so that we can discern between the good and the evil portions of ourselves because we're human.
Hmm.
But the fear that we are talking about today is not that fear. The fear is fear of everything. Oh, if I don't, where's my hand? If I don't hold my hand this way during prayer, oh my God, God's not going to accept my prayer. Oh, if I'm not, doing 500 dhikr every day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be angry with me. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Where am I going to fit it?
Hmm.
That's the distinction I think that we need to make. That's really important, and I also think that it's something that we as humans misunderstand.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. So you mentioned that, a person when they're in this state of fear and, this fear overflows into their spiritual or religious life, that they seem to shut down, right? Like they're almost in this freeze state, right? And they think that this is just normal life, right? But what would you say that looks like in your clinical work? So if somebody's in that freeze state or they shut down, what exactly does that look like somatically and physically?
I think that based upon my experiences and what I have observed and worked through with people, I think that it tends to look like um, first of all, just physically and mentally checking out.
Mm,
That so now, some you could say that that's not a physiological necessarily uh, example. However, when you check out, you're checking out in every way. you might think that you're just mentally checking out, but your body physically is checking out. So you're not going to notice the signs in your body if something is off, if something doesn't feel right, the signals that your body gives you, whether it be physical illness where you have an ache or a pain and you just no longer you ignored it for so long and you're so checked out that you don't even realize it's there anymore, but it's there.
Mm.
Emotionally, you're not able to connect with loved ones, be, as you said, present in your prayer or however that manifests. That is it's the actual outcome doesn't seem physical, but internally it's physical because your nervous system has gotten the signal that you're unsafe, even though
Mm.
mentally you're not processing that you're unsafe. So now your system is protecting itself, your physiological system is protecting itself, and the outcome is that you withdraw, that you mentally check out, that you emotionally check out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much for
then
that.
when you talk about semantic in physiological, other physiological things, um, just okay, one thing that I do a lot with clients is I call it the heart connection. Put my hand over our heart and we say out loud, I'm going to connect with my heart. And there's a whole process we go through. It's short, but there's a little bit of a process. Now, when you do that, there's an immediate sense of calm that overcomes you.
Mm.
Like you can feel it on your skin, you can feel it going through your system, you can feel just like a breath release, and you feel calm and you feel steady. Now, without that, the physiological manifestations or outcomes of that is you're tense, you're tight, your shoulders are not dropped, they're I'm not lack of
Raised
loss of
up.
word here,
Yeah.
but they're like raised up and just
Yeah,
tight. Your neck,
exactly.
people have a lot of neck issues, migraines and headaches
Mm-hmm.
is huge
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're holding all of this tightly, physically tightly. You'll notice kids sometimes, or even adults, they'll clench their fists. They don't even realize that they do it. They
Interesting.
clench their teeth, their jaw is tight, and they don't even realize that they do it. Um, there's, some gut issues. A lot of people just they might not have a diagnosed gut issue, but they always feel nauseous or quite often feel nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
So gut issues come into play. And then like I go back to the breathing. The breathing is something that it's either too fast or too shallow. One of the two, depending
Mm.
on the person. Another thing, all of the autoimmune diseases, a lot of um, a lot of what people experience, yes, they may have, diagnosed reasons that they get whatever the autoimmune issue is that they have, but the core of it, the trigger that makes it worse, creates flares, comes back to this holding everything, this fear, this ignoring our body's signals, not taking care, feeling unsafe,
Yeah.
um, missing the mark to regain our safety. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how does this connect at all to trauma bonds? Like, and the relationships that we have with others and
Well,
because yeah, relationship we have with others and the relationship that we have with ourselves, because I think this is where it gets
mhm.
really nuanced.
Well, it's, I believe, and I feel that it's directly connected with trauma bonds because if you have a trauma bond, that means you're locked to it, right? That means you're functioning according to how you're. nervous system and how it perceives it need what it perceives it needs to do to remain safe. So that trauma is controlling whatever happens to the nervous system, whatever signals are sent to the nervous system, which we don't even realize most of the time, and what your action or reaction or inaction is going to be. What I see with my Muslim sisters quite often when it comes to trauma bond is that they become complacent. They just
Ah.
become accepting of whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they continue on the same path, trying to get different results in the name of being a good wife, being a good Muslim, being a good human. When in
Mm-hmm.
actual, so it's almost, and then there's a cultural aspect to it because many of my sisters are not from the American culture. They're
Yeah.
from Middle East, Asia, wherever. And there's a big drive in many cultures that the woman, a good wife, a good mother, a good lady, gives of herself and gives herself completely to everybody else.
Yes, the self-abandoning empath.
Yes. So when you so when and I call that trauma.
Yeah.
I call that the outcome of trauma or a trauma bond
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because you're functioning your nervous system is trying to protect you, and your actions are based on how your nervous system is protecting you physiologically, for example, but you don't realize it, and your actions come out to also protect you for the moment, which makes you realize even less, because if you become compliant over something that you shouldn't be, then you don't have trouble in your world, quote unquote trouble in your world. But
Mm-hmm.
you go away at night by yourself, and when you're sitting and thinking and doing whatever you do, and you don't feel good, you don't feel well, you feel emotionally distraught, you feel
Yeah.
ill, your stomach is upset, you have a migraine, you have whatever, however it manifests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like they've lost their authentic self.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know who they are anymore. They're just like, okay, this is what I gotta do. This is what this is my checklist. They dread waking up in the morning because they know it's just gonna be the same old, go on autopilot. And I think that trauma bonds, they might even be able to show up in our spiritual life, right? Is it like what do you think a trauma bond with the divine, with the creator would look like? Like how would you recognize that in somebody?
I think that when it comes to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trauma bonds, I think it can go two ways, probably multiple ways, but I'm going to focus on two that we don't realize. Either we over we our actions or what we do or how we perceive and think about how we're supposed to be as worshipers, we either overdo it, and when I say overdo it, I mean to the point of you almost can't do it because it's not realistic in your day to day or realistic in your
Yeah.
in your in as just being a human being, right? You don't have grace with yourself. You just, instead of praying for, if you're cut for time or whatever, instead of doing the prayer and doing it in a normal pace, which only takes, I don't know, what, maybe 2 minutes, if that, if you did it
Mm-hmm.
at a normal pace, you sit for hours thinking that you're doing better when you're neglecting all sorts of other stuff pertaining to yourself and other things that are important, that
Mm-hmm.
are mandated and put upon you, right? That's one way. The other way is you just don't practice. And then you beat yourself up because you don't practice well or at all. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't pray, you don't you aren't able to, even du'ats become difficult.
True.
Even, you forget the small things, like just saying, when you're walking down the street and you see a flower growing out of pavement, which it shouldn't be, but it's beautiful and it's special. Instead of saying, "Oh my God, Alhamdulillah, how beautiful! Thank you, Allah, for showing me that," you don't even think about the Creator. You just pass it by. You might not have even really seen it.
Yeah.
So I think the two main ways I would say are one of those two, and then there's all sorts of in betweens, of course.
Yeah. I mean, from an Islamic perspective, it really breaks my heart because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself in the Quran as Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the most merciful of those who show mercy, right? He's Al-Wadud, the loving one, Al-Latif, the kind, right? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so gentle, right? And then, the fact that we're so harsh on ourselves, like, where is that coming from? But as you said, it's trauma. And I guess this comes from childhood, right? If somebody grew up with a caregiver who was unpredictable, right? Loving one
Hmm.
moment and then next moment they're punishing or angry or rageful, right? Then what happens is our nervous system might be projecting that same dynamic onto our understanding of Allah, right? Where you're constantly walking on eggshells, you're nervous, oh my gosh, am I good enough, right? Thinking that we can almost earn paradise, right? When even the
Right.
Sahaba, right, the companions, they would tell the Prophet ﷺ, like, there's nothing that I have. All I have is my love, right? All I have is my love for Allah and
Yeah.
my love for His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like that's all. I don't have anything, right? Because they knew that you can't earn paradise, right? You can't earn Allah's treasures, right? Like it's out of His mercy, right? And we are not meant to be perfect, right? And I feel like there's hints of perfectionism in here too, you know. But I think it's important for people to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not this, you know, mean, judgmental Lord who's going to, punish you for your mistakes, right? Maybe you grew up in an environment where perhaps that was the case, right? If you didn't get 100 on your tests, it was like, what's wrong with you, right? But that's your trauma. That's not Allah, right? Allah's mercy is not conditional upon our perfectionism or upon our great achievements and accomplishments, right? It's not contingent on our having a perfect performance. Um, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said that even if our sins were to reach the clouds and we turned to Allah, that He would forgive us, But
Hmm.
then what happens is, like you said, the nervous system learned that love and safety are conditional. And so when
Hmm.
that happens, like we can't receive that truth. Like we can understand it intellectually. Like, yes, we know that Allah is merciful. Of course, we could say that, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We say it every day, but we can't actually receive, like it can't land in us. We can't
Of course,
process it.
yeah.
Yeah. So what do
Yeah,
you think,
and
what do you think would be the healing path for somebody who's realizing that this is their pattern?
well, number one, I don't think anybody should be on this path in this life alone. There are so many resources and so many people like ourselves trying to do good work to support others at a very reasonable, like, I mean, we need to make a living, right? But at a very reasonable rate so that we don't have to turn people away, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, just because everybody needs somebody that is more knowledgeable in whatever, in healing, in, this path, or being on this path, or that you need to have somebody as a support. That's number
Absolutely.
one. Number two, I think that, um, people, we want everything yesterday. Like when we think of something, we want it like yesterday. And I was very bad at this for a long time in my life.
Yeah.
And not everything, we thought we are taught to believe that everything is linear. You do this at 8 o'clock, then at 9 o'clock, then at 10 o'clock, then 11 o'clock. You do this first, second, third, fourth. Everything progresses linearly, and that is not the way healing works, and that's not the way the journey to your creator works. That's not the way the universe works. Everything is cyclical, not linear.
Mm.
And so there's a mindset shift that needs to take place, and mindset shifts take a lot of work that's subtle, a lot of patience, and a lot of time so that the actual shift in the behavior in yourself and how you think actually begins to manifest.
Mm.
Um, another thing I think too is, sometimes we are our own worst enemies, right?
True.
We have whatever belief system we have, and we hold on to it for dear life, as if we lose it, it's the earth is going to come to an end, and
Yeah.
we need to have we need to remember that not only is that not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and
So,
all of what we know Islamically, what it teaches, but it's not even scientifically supported. It's not in the latest consciousness, areas of consciousness research. It's not supported. Like we we need to really like check ourselves
mm.
and not hold on for dear life to things that don't serve us well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard thing because some of the things that we think serve us well, we think we need them, when in actuality they're not serving us well, and really we don't need them, but we've convinced ourselves somehow that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just want to add a little story. I want an experience I had, and this is a personal experience.
Sure.
I went through a very hard time with one of my children, and I actually I could not locate my son. And this is one thing that is like, I don't know if I have to ask myself, could I survive if I ever lost one of my children? That's a question I ask myself, right? Because I'm a pretty
Mm-hmm.
strong person. And I couldn't find him, and I didn't know how he was, and I didn't know the situation, and I couldn't physically locate him. And I went every place that I knew to go to physically locate him, and I couldn't. And I had a friend who was helping me at the time, and I couldn't really think straight. So I never thought to call hospitals and all of that. It didn't even cross my mind. But I sat in my car and I made dua. And my dua was not the typical dua. Most people, when were taught, and most people have been taught, you make dua, you be humble, you do,
Yeah.
be careful what you say, you're talking to Allah. I made dua and I said, Allah, I've believed in you my whole life, even when I wasn't Muslim. I've done everything I can possibly do. I know I'm a poor servant. I know I'm not the best. I know I'm not 100, like I'm trying. But I believed in you before I was even Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, do not allow my son to be lost. Don't,
I love it.
don't. And I swear to you, wallahi, in 1 hour, my friend that thought to call a hospital
Mm-hmm.
found him in one of the hospitals.
Wow.
And most people, if I tell Muslims, I mean, most people, if I tell them this story, they're like, Alhamdulillah, and they're very happy and it makes them feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in actuality, most of us would think, how can you talk to Allah that way?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't like, oh yeah, Allah. I mean, I was strong. Now I
Mm-hmm.
was appropriate because you're talking to your creator, but I was strong.
Mm-hmm.
More like on the demanding side, like what, why, don't do this. And most people can't relate to that, but I'm going to tell you, when you I'm not perfect, and I'm not, I have so many things I can get better at in worship, and and life drags us around, and we forget things in our worship. However, the bottom line is, and the foundation is I know that I know that I know that Allah's been there for me forever.
Yeah.
I know that I know that I know that Allah loves me and I love Allah.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that whatever I have done in my life, He's going to forgive me. I know this.
Mm-hmm.
In my heart, when I say it, I feel something as bad as the worst thing I could possibly do. I know He's going to forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to this place, believe it or not, sister, you have no fear of death
So true.
at all.
So true. Oh my
And
gosh,
most
this, yeah.
people, yeah, no
SubhanAllah.
fear of death. Now, why this relates is because I'm not functioning. I have been able through my entire life, because I didn't have a white picket fence, perfect, lovely, wondrous background. I have been able somehow, through everything that I've worked on in myself and what through Allah and through everything, to come to this point. And my message is everybody can get to this point. But let me tell you, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And it's something you have to work on every single day in some way, not a
Mm-hmm.
massive way, but in some way. And that takes enlightenment, that takes understanding, that takes mind shifts, that takes getting rid of old patterns and bringing in newer ones, better ones that serve you. So it really makes us go inside of ourselves and figure it out. And that's what's scary to people. And that's why most people, I would say 98%, don't ever go beyond a certain point because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yes, like change is scary, right? Like, because like you said, you've lived this way for your whole life, and now to change it seems like almost an impossible task, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say there is somebody listening to this podcast today, and they're like, okay, like I think I'm ready, that I don't want to, worship from a place of anxiety, right? That I want to trust my Lord. I want to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it loves me and will forgive me, right? All I have to do is turn to him and his forgiveness is there, right? But what does the path forward for that person look like?
The first thing I would tell that person is you need to get somebody to support you that you can work through and gain resources from. Whomever that person is for you, that's the number, that's the first thing. The second thing, sit down and make a deal with yourself that you are open to learning and understanding something that may, when it initially hits you, you're like, I don't know about that. And I don't understand it. And I don't know what we're doing, but okay. And then trust the process and start. And
Mm,
then third, there's nothing, I probably should have put this one first, actually. Because we're Muslim and because we believe and we know one God and Allah and the Creator, go pull away for a couple minutes by yourself and just put everything out to Allah. Allah, I'm giving all this to you. I don't know what to do anymore. Like,
I love
just,
it.
I'm giving it all to you. And I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm giving it all to you. Help me.
Hmm.
Help me. But, and then be open and et cetera, et cetera. So I should have put that one first.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It reminds me of the verse وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ, that where I surrender my affairs to you, ya Allah. You know everything. You see all of our affairs. You see everything happening. You take care of it. Yeah, mashallah. Love, love, love that. Love those mindset
And it's
shifts.
not easy. It's
Oh
not
no.
easy because the unknown is something that we have as humans a big problem with, and I do myself in it because it's scary, is the unknown.
Yeah, we want to control. We want to control. We think that if things are in our control, that at least, we'll be safe somehow. But ironically, that's the opposite, right? That when we surrender things to Allah and we let go of the control, that is the ultimate safety.
Yep, yep,
Yeah, subhanAllah. So
absolutely.
yeah, so let's say somebody, is struggling with people pleasing, and it's really been taking over and running their life for, their whole their whole existence. What somatic practices do you think they could start with that would be beneficial?
First and foremost, you have to connect with yourself multiple times during the day. How many? 100 if you have to. You put your hand
Mm.
over your heart and you say out loud to yourself, and it doesn't have to be out loud, loud in public, but you just say, I'm connecting with my heart. Allah, this is the
Mm.
seed of God. I'm connecting with my heart. And you take like 3 deep breaths and you make that connection. That's the first thing. Then when you're connected, you know, remind me the second part of the question.
So I said, what are some somatic practices that they can
Yes.
start with? Yeah.
So connecting with the heart, with your heart space. So that's connecting with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is connecting with the universe around you. And all that is noticing. Step outside, look toward the sun, toward the light. Notice the tree over there that's been there for 30 years that you lived in the house and you never look at it. Go touch it.
Mm.
Go, and then third, go to, if you stop to Wawa every day, out of the kindness of your soul, buy a complete stranger a cup of coffee, whomever they may be.
Mm-hmm.
Just buy a person. You're connecting with the universe around you. You're connecting with others, even though you're not going up and speaking to them. They might not even know who bought them their cup of coffee, but
Mm-hmm.
you made some sort of connection. You connected with yourself, you connected with the universe, you connected with others. And then once you start doing those simple, like something like that, those 3 little simple things, then try the heart connection before you pray. We're not changing the salah. We're not adding to the salah. This has nothing to do with the salah.
Mm-hmm.
Before we pray, I taught this to kids. Before we pray, we take a minute, connect with our heart, and then we go and we start our prayer like we're supposed to. Notice the difference, the connection that you feel.
True.
So that heart connection is a big thing. The other thing that I have to say, and this is more of something that needs a little, I think, more time and guidance, is you really have to look at what you're putting in your body. In our deen, and correct me, Maria, if I'm wrong, because this is your lane, but and you're the scholar here, not me, on Islam. And if you, it's somewhere, whether it's hadith or in the Quran, I'm not sure which, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a cure for every disease.
Mm.
So it's out there, but we're no longer looking for it. That's number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, on a day to day basis, what are you putting into your body? First of all, we eat about 3 times, the average person eats about 3 times more than what they need, and they feed their children 3 times more than what they need. That's just
Wow.
quantity. That's just quantity. The second thing is what are we putting into our body? When people tend to think that, oh, oh, my poor baby, he's not going to get a cupcake. Oh, I want a cupcake. Oh, I can't go without this or that or the other thing. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
asking you to go without forever, like completely maybe, but I mean, what if you didn't have a cupcake only maybe a couple times a year? Just because you wanted the taste of it. Maybe you end up you didn't want the taste of it, but the sugar content, the sugar and what sugar does to our system, it's worse than drugs. It's as
True.
bad as cocaine.
Oh yeah.
That's scientifically established, by the
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we actually put in our body. And then when you talk about, now some people in our deen believe that they, only can eat halal, which is fine. That's the best way to go. But if you fall on the side of where it's not easily accessible or whatever, and you don't only eat halal, you eat whatever meat is available or, chicken, fish, and you just say Bismillah and you eat. Think about even then, where is this coming from? If it's not grass fed, if it's not range free, if it's not any of those, that means you're consuming traumatized animals.
Yep.
If
Yep.
you're consuming traumatized animals, then you're introducing trauma and everything that comes with it through another living organism, which is no longer living, but you're putting it in your body. And what do you think that's going to manifest in your body? Now, grain, like I said, look for range free, look for that they're raised properly without
Yeah.
trauma, basically. All of the snacks and the fake foods that we have. I'm not going to say I never have, some here and there. I process foods. There are some foods, it's hard to get away completely away from processed foods. However, there are some processed foods I never eat
Mm-hmm.
just because it's like they don't even taste good to me anymore and they make me feel so sick if I just eat a bite of it.
Yeah, especially the
So,
ultra processed ones, right? It's
exactly,
not even
exactly.
real.
So,
Yeah.
though, think about what you're putting in your body and give yourself a little bit more credit that you can do it if you so choose not to, not to eat this or that, or to substitute this for that, or change some of your habits, or eat a half less than what you eat already.
Mm.
And children don't need cupcakes and they don't need cookies and they don't need all of this stuff. As a matter of fact, if you have a child who never had sugar or never had cupcakes or cookies or any of that, when they eat it the first time, it's not good.
Mm.
Usually. Now it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take them long to say, "Oh, I love this." That doesn't take long.
Mm-hmm.
But however, initially, it's like, giving them a Brussels sprout.
Yeah.
We always associate, the vegetable that the kids give us a face, but they'll do the same thing with sugar if they've never ever experienced it. Um, so I think that's a huge, this is probably up there with the list of the number ones. That's a
Yeah.
big problem. And then to say no, I want to say something about this saying no, because a lot of women,
Mm-hmm.
especially, no matter what their backgrounds are, we have a problem saying no, and that's something that has to be practiced.
Yeah.
So what you do is you stand in front of the mirror and you teach yourself and you look at yourself and you gracefully say, "No, I'm sorry, I can't right now." In a nice, humble, pleasant way,
Yeah.
you practice it. And then when the opportunity comes in outside, you tend to say yes, but inside you're saying no. Use those practice moments in a nice way to say, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now," or "No, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm not going to do that right now," or whatever it is. Because if you don't hear it, if you don't look at yourself, if you don't say it yourself, practice it, look at yourself when you do it, hear yourself do it, then you're not going to be able to do it when you're under the pressure of yes or no, of the choice, right?
True. Yeah, it takes practice.
Yeah. So I think I would start with those three or four things that I mentioned. I don't know, my list grew as I talked.
No, I love it. Yeah, no, you made some amazing points. Yeah, I mean, even eating, right? Like the diet, as you said, like it's caring for the vessel that Allah blessed you with, you know? And even in the Quran, like Allah says, "Kulu min at-tayyibat," like eat from the tayyib, eat from the good, eat from what's good of what Allah created for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
It's very, very important. And this is why we have halal meat, right? This is why we have the concept of halal in Islam. Why? It's like you said, like we don't want to eat traumatized animals, like that is going to affect your soul, right? What you eat does affect your soul. It is going to affect your spirituality. It's going to affect many parts of your life, even the things that we can't see directly, right? Like there's no
Exactly.
scientist that's going to tell you it, but it's there.
Exactly. I'm convinced, and I don't believe there's any scientific research because I've tried to look, but I'm convinced, science or not, I'm convinced that a majority of our mental health issues in the West in particular
Yeah.
can be attributed to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
And
I mean,
I
there is
mean,
research. There is research on
I
this. Yeah.
I mean full-fledged diagnosed mental health conditions
Yeah.
by the DSM-5 or whatever the book
Mm-hmm.
they use to diagnose.
Yeah.
I'm convinced, and there may be. I mean, I'm sure I can't read everything, right? But there's not much, sister. There's not much double and triple blind studies, and all the money went into it's not like it's not up there with cancer research or something, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's lots to be done. Lots of work to be done for sure. Um, yeah, so going back to the idea of ihsan and devotion and healing from these wounds that we have and of course taking care of our bodies, taking care of our mental health, taking care of our nutrition and getting proper nourishment, all of this is going to inshallah help us to heal. But what does it look like at the end? So what does that embodied ihsan, embodied excellence and devotion actually feel like in lived experience? So not just conceptually, but how does it feel in the body when you can finally worship Allah and it's not from a place of a trauma bond. It's not from a place of anxiety or shame or guilt. Like what does it feel like in the body to worship from love?
Well, first of all, it you first of all, I would say that you feel a sense of peace from within, meaning the shoulders are relaxed now. There's no tension in the neck. You're not, you don't have signs of anxiety. Um, and where that comes from is the fact that you accept that you're not perfect.
Mm,
Your worship, your eating, your sleeping, your professional, whatever you do, none of it is going to be perfect. So don't even try to make it perfect because we cannot be perfect. We're human. And
yeah.
it's knowing that at an internal, deep level takes pressure off of you, off of your nervous system. And then what starts to seep in is acceptance, which translates into safety. And
Mm,
then you notice that let's say, for example, because this is a big one, let's say you missed a salah. Instead of you beating yourself up, saying how bad you are, fearing that you're never ever going to be forgiven about this, all of a sudden you find yourself going to your next salah and you're saying, okay, I'm going to forgive myself. I tried my best. I'll do better next time. It's certainly okay. I'm going to ask Allah to forgive me, and I know He will.
aw,
And
yeah.
when you get that is a huge thing, a huge thing for us because most of us will say, "Well, I'll ask for forgiveness, but I don't know. It's up to Allah.
Mm-hmm.
One never knows."
Mm-hmm.
Right there, that's like self-doubt right there. Except for
Yeah.
you're not doubting yourself, you're
Yeah.
doubting your creator.
True.
But
True.
but it's the same concept, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing is so you become more merciful and forgiving of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is over time, because your defense mechanisms aren't up, because you feel safer, because you are not functioning from that place of fear from, oh my God, I'm never going to be forgiven by Allah, then what happens is instead of something becoming something that creates anxiety and tension and upset stomach and migraines and all of those kinds of things, it turns into you're just able to do what you're supposed to do the best you can, and you notice that you're doing it better without even really trying to do it better, but you're doing it better.
Yeah.
And then you can build upon that because you feel better physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Yeah, it makes total
So
sense. It makes a lot
exactly.
of
I mean,
sense.
exactly. So, but we don't realize what like we don't realize it's so subtle, sister. It's so subtle
Yeah.
that we miss it in our day to day. We just we don't get it. And
Hmm.
unless you're awake and you're working on things and you're trying to shift mindset and you're working with, then you really it's a real struggle because you can't see.
True. Yeah. And that goes back to what you were saying before, that you need somebody to mentor you on the journey. Like you can't
Yep.
do it alone because you can't see things in yourself that somebody else will be able to, like even just having this conversation with you today, like I've opened up my eyes, opened up my heart to so many things, and this is why the community is so important, and having people around us. And that's why I also love our age gap, right? That you're like double my age, and it's beautiful,
Yep.
because there's so much to learn, and that's the beauty of life, really, is having this open heart, and having the openness to change and to accept the fact that,
Hmm.
maybe the way that I've been doing things until now isn't really the best for me, right? And maybe Allah subhanahu
Another,
wa ta'ala
yeah,
doesn't want us to to be these robots, that we're supposed to be
exactly.
alive.
Well, another thing too, Sister Maria, is, and I haven't mentioned this, but I think it needs to be mentioned, and it just flashed in my mind as I was listening to what you were saying. Guilt is, not guilt, I'm sorry. Um, Judgment from others is something culturally, varying cultures have different degrees of judgment on each other. Human beings, we have a tendency toward this in general, no matter what culture. But some cultures, the judgment from the outside, from others, is a big hurdle to overcome.
Yeah.
And another thing that happens when you start working on some of the things that we've talked about today is you know in your heart that you're right for you and this is safe for you, and it doesn't it becomes less and less important how others are going to judge you
Yeah.
over time.
Hmm.
And this is a big one for women.
Yeah, self-trust. Trusting yourself.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, it's really, really not easy. Especially when we've been, gaslit in previous relationships, or, denied, or or made to believe like other people have better judgment than we do, being
Hmm.
told that we're wrong, and that, oh, you saw it that way, but that's just your perception. That's not reality, right? When we're told these things, if we're, I have a history, a lot of my clients, right, including myself, I mean, we have this history of unhealthy relationships where we're constantly told that all the time, like, something's wrong with you, and no, you see it that way, that's not the case. No, I never said that. You're imagining things, right? And then of course we're going to be struggling with this self-trust. But again, that's where the healing aspect comes in. That's where the mentorship comes in. That's where the community comes in, because we can develop self-trust, right, as we learn to set boundaries with these types of people and distance from people who make us feel less than, having uplifting human beings around us. And that's why I feel like company is so important, right? The Prophet, peace be
Yeah.
upon him, he said that, that good company is better than solitude, but solitude is better than bad company, you know? And
Exactly.
because people around us affect us whether we like it or not. It's
Of
that's what
course.
happens.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And another thing too is when it comes to our dean, um, we I've interacted, there's a difference between I'm a revert, so I come from an American perspective because that's where this is where I grew up. I grew up in a non-Muslim family, and I'm very Western in my thinking on a lot of things. When you come from other places in the world and other cultures, even to question anything, you know, is frowned upon, especially when it comes to Dean.
true.
And you know, if you don't question every aspect of anything, including Dean, then how, my question back to that is, how can you possibly have a balance? Let's not even say a deep understanding, a balanced understanding
Yeah.
of something as important as Dean, because the Dean is supposed to be the foundation of our lives, right?
Yep.
So if you don't question and build understanding because you're not supposed to, quote unquote, how do you ever, how is it, it's impossible to ever get to the point where you have at minimal a balanced understanding of your Dean, which is supposed to be your foundation.
Yeah.
And the second thing to that is, and this is particularly to women, um, at least I see it as that. Um, a lot of things are wrapped up into culture. I don't care if you're Western, if you're Middle Eastern, if you're Asian. We all have our cultural innuendos. That's a fact. However, when you go to judge things and you go to finding where you stand on things and finding yourself and finding, breaking those trauma bonds and breaking some of the things that are holding you back, um, go back and see what Dean really teaches. Because a lot of the things that are out there being perpetuated as Dean are nothing more than culture.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that's a dangerous, dangerous thing, because that's nothing other than someone trying to control someone else.
Yeah.
And as
Exactly.
far as relationships, let's talk. I'll give an example. Let's talk about spousal relationships, men and women. Listen, there's a difference between men and women. We all know that. If you and your husband are having a major conflict over something, whatever it may be, because that's going to happen, go back to the Dean. Educate yourself as to what exactly does the Dean really say and exemplify about this, and go back to the Sahaba and go back to the Prophet's wives and go back
Yeah.
to all of that. Because if you do, what you will find is culture has seeped in, oftentimes on both sides, husband or wife, no matter what the cultures are.
Yep.
And you're either promoting something that is not Dean based, or it's twisted a little bit, or you're not in tune with something that is Dean based and you just don't know.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's funny because because every week we read stories of the Sahabiyat in my community, the Heartful Sanctuary,
Uh-huh.
and every week we are shocked at the things that we learn about when we are studying the female companions of the Prophet
Yeah.
sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we see how they set boundaries, how they said no, how they were strong and brave, sometimes braver than the men were, right? And the roles that they took on. I'm like, sometimes, we say like if the aunties in our masjids today saw this woman who's a Sahabiya, who's, the most closest to Allah that there is, right? After the Prophet is the Sahaba. And if the
Yep.
aunties in the masjid today were to see what she did, they would faint, right? They'd be like, oh my gosh, she has no shame. She should have more adab. She should keep her mouth shut, right? Like these are cultural things that you're alluding to, right? But
Yep.
as you said, it's so important to go back to the origin to the OGs, right? Who are the
Yep.
first most pious women to have ever lived? What did they do? What did their relationships look like? What was their relationship to their fathers, to their husbands, to their children? And and let's learn from them directly so that we are free of this the cultural shackles, you could say.
Exactly. I mean, I run into all the time. And I'm not picking on husbands at this point. I'm just using this as an example because us women, we have our issues too. But the hijab, the issue of the hijab. They don't want the woman wants to cover with the hijab, and her husband doesn't want her to cover.
Hmm.
First and foremost, that is not even a discussion or up to the husband in any way, shape, or form.
Yep. And there's
It's
no
it's
obedience
it's
in the disobedience of Allah, anyways.
Of course. I mean, but once again, when you talk about trauma bonds and you talk about culture and control,
Oh
and I
yeah.
may not be, is a trauma bond.
Yep.
It's used in that way often. And when it comes to certain things, you don't want to, in a relationship, whether it's spousal relationship or not, you want to choose the mountains you die on carefully. You can't die on every mountain. Like it's just it's just not a good thing to do. You just
Yeah.
can't die on every
Pick your
mountain.
battles.
But there are certain things that should be unwavering, but you don't even know what they are if you're not in tune with yourself, if you're not
Yeah.
connected, if you're not spiritually sound, if you're working from a trauma bond base, or you haven't worked through all of these things, that you have trouble saying no, you're afraid of shame, you have guilt issues, whatever they be, and we all
Yeah.
have suffered different things.
Yeah.
But if you remain unknown, if you remain in the state of unknowing, then you can't progress to an understanding to even know your dean.
Yeah.
And that's so sad
It's
when
true.
it comes to us. It's so sad because we end up slighting ourselves majorly in the most important aspect of our lives, and we don't even realize it. And then my question is, well, if we're slighting ourselves in this way, imagine what we're doing in all the other areas and aspects of our self.
Yeah.
We have to
That's a
be
good point,
it's
yeah.
going to be there too,
Hmm. Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah, it affects every aspect of our life, these patterns that we've been conditioned to think is okay, the things that, and maybe at one point in our life, maybe when we were kids, that these survival mechanisms did help us at one point, right? Maybe we were kids and we had to people please because maybe we had a parent who was a rageaholic and we were actually unsafe, right? The trouble is
mhm.
when we're trying to keep these habits now when we are adults and we have sovereignty and we have the ability to make choices for ourselves. And now it almost reminds me of that elephant story, right? Where the elephant was as a young, um, as a young baby elephant that the circus trainers would tie its neck around with a rope and tie it to a pole, right? And it would try to move its neck away from the pole and try to get free, but it wasn't strong enough at that age. And then that same elephant, when it's huge and a ginormous elephant, it's a fully grown adult, and they put that same rope around and tie it to the pole, right? The elephant doesn't even try to pull away because it thinks, oh
Yep.
no, I tried this as a kid, it never worked, right? But the
Yep.
truth is that if that elephant did pull even just a little bit, the rope would break loose because it's so strong.
Exactly.
And it's the
Yep.
same thing now as adults. It's like we're using the same things. We think that we're not strong, but we actually are. We just got to pull the rope and
Right. And
we can get free.
exactly. exactly. And something I want to say something that I think is very important because I don't want it to be misunderstood. When we talk of sovereignty, first of all, sovereignty it directly comes from trust in yourself,
Yeah.
your body, your nervous system, and everything about you trusting you. But so I want to make that point. But a bigger point here, a clarification, I guess I want to make is there's a difference. If you're unable to say no, for example, this is the easiest one. So I'm going to stick with this idea of not being able to say no.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not able to say no and you're always the yes person, that's problematic because you're going to get burnt out. You're going to not be happy inside yourself. You're going to be emotionally distraught, and et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, if you are in a situation and you choose yourself, I really don't want this right now, but I'm choosing to say yes because I know A, B, and C. So you really want to say no, but you're choosing to say yes because of A, B, and C. That's different than you just always saying yes and to keep peace.
Yeah.
Because you know the difference, because you can recognize the difference, and based upon the data or information or whatever you want to call it that you have in front of you in the moment, you're choosing to take this route for these reasons to get this outcome. If that's a choice and you're not, you won't, then you won't be emotionally distraught or anything, even though you really wanted to say no. The problem is when you want to say no, you don't say no. You're upset because you didn't say no. You're guilty because you didn't say no. You're shaming yourself because you didn't say no, and you had no choice in the matter, so you didn't say. And it goes. There's
Yeah.
there's a difference. There's a big difference. So sometimes, listen, if you're a mom, if you're a wife, if you're an auntie, if you're a daughter, which all of us are, to some in some of those, you have said yes many times when you wanted to say no. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But the question is, did you choose to say yes despite knowing that you wanted to say no? And then why did you choose to say yes? And what
Mm-hmm.
outcome were you going for? And what outcome did you get?
Yeah.
So it's not that you just blindly do like if we say we're talking this in this one example, we're talking about being connected with yourself, deeper level, knowing yourself, trusting yourself, sovereignty, etc. And as a whole picture, yes, that's where all of us need to be to have healthy relationships with ourselves and with others. But don't think that you're never going to be in a situation where you might cognitively and emotionally and everything in you do the yes when you feel like you really want to do the no, but it's without shame, it's without guilt, it's without all of those negative things because you have chosen yourself to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, even when it comes to worship, I feel like choosing to worship Allah would mean so much and be so much more valuable than just doing it because you feel like it's an obligation. Like, oh, I have to
Of
pray.
course. I was in Qatar for several years. At that time I was a principal of a boys division, and it was a struggling division. These were Qatari boys, teenagers. It was tough sometimes. But I asked a group of them one time when I was talking to the whole division because there was some issue. And I said to them, I asked them, you have to ask yourselves, are you Muslim because you choose to be Muslim, or are you Muslim just because you were born Muslim? Your
Yeah,
answer is important because there's a big difference.
yeah,
And you know, that choice piece is huge. And many people, many cultures, Islamic cultures, have a real issue because they're uncomfortable with. the fact that at the end of the day, your children or whomever, they have a choice as to whether they're going to be Muslim because they really believe in Islam or whether they're just, doing the doing what they have to do so they don't have to hear anybody say anything to them.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's huge. That's huge.
It is.
And it's it all comes back to choice.
Yeah.
It all comes back to choice. And at the end of the day, we all choose.
100%. Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Even inaction is a choice, right?
Yep.
So everybody we have yeah, we're sovereign adults and we're not in that unsafe environment that we might have been in before. And even if we are, we have a choice to leave, right? We're gonna be okay. Allah is our provider, right? We don't need someone controlling us, thinking that we need them and that we have to put up with their abuse just because. We
Yep.
need them for our survival. We're not kids anymore, right? So as adults, as grown women, now we can make our own choices and we have to make our own choices and we have to ask ourselves, why am I making the choices that I'm making? Is this really the
Yep.
life I want to live? Who am I? Right? And when you can
Yep.
ask that question, who do I want to be? That's when you're going to know what you need to do. So,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah. All right, Dr. Debbie. Well, this has been such a powerful conversation. Amazing. Please let us know, where can people find you and learn more about the work that you do?
Okay, so they can come to www.evolveglobal22usa.com. And that's my website. And then on YouTube, just put in at Dr. Debbie, Debbie Badawi. And you can find me, all my social media is under that handle.
Awesome, beautiful. And for everybody listening here, if this conversation hits something deep inside of you, if you are recognizing these patterns and you are ready to do the deep work of healing, I want to invite you into a deeper container. I work with Muslim women who are ready to move from performing to presence, from people pleasing to sovereignty, and from trauma bonds to true, real, sincere devotion. So, my one on one coaching packages and my group coaching through the Heartful Sanctuary are where we do this together with Islamic grounding and nervous system regulation. You can find all the details at community.heartfulmuslimah.com. Or you can DM me on Instagram at Heartful Muslimah. Until the next time, remember that your healing is not a betrayal of your faith. Your healing is your faith in action. And with that, I wish you a heartful rest of your year. Thank you again to Dr. Debbie, and we'll see you next time.